Hierarchies are not the only way of getting objects to affect one another. In fact, we can keep objects in separate hierarchies and we can still get them to affect each other with something that's called constraints. And constraints in 3ds Max are really simple to find. We come up to the animation menu at the top here, we click on this, and we come down to this constraints area, and these two little buttons are these kind of dotted lines at the top. If we click on this, we can break off this rollout and we can actually have it so that we can get access to all of the constraints within 3ds Max. Now, these are all grayed out at the moment. If I try clicking on any of these, none of them are going to work. We're going to actually have to create some objects so that these can affect objects in the scene. So let me just create two boxes because it's going to be easy enough for us to create and see. So I'll create one across here and one across here. And with that done, we can start using these constraints to affect one another. Now, if I jump into the schematic view real quick, you can see that these two guys sit in their own hierarchies. They're not affecting one another, so in the scene when we grab this and we move it, nothing happens to the other one. Likewise, if we rotate it, and if we do the same on this side, you know, these guys are not connected in any way except they sit in the same scene. That's fine, but let's use these constraints to actually do something. So the most common ones are things like the position constraint. If I click this guy here and I click on position constraint, you'll notice a dotted line happens, and this is saying, okay, this guy is going to be position constraint 2, and now we have to click the object that's going to be position constraint 2. And in this case, I want it to be this cube over here, this box. So if I click on this just with my left mouse button, he jumps across and sits inside at the position of this guy because he's position constraint 2. And in fact, if we move this box on the outside around, it comes along with it. We're not able to see it because it's inside, but let me show you in wireframe mode. You can see the box is sitting inside of there, this grayed out one in here. And if we move this box, it comes along for free. If we rotate the box, nothing actually happens to the cube inside or the box inside because there's not a rotation constraint on there or an orientation constraint. Now, orientation constraints are down here. So if we clicked on this box, we do another constraint. We use the orientation constraint this time. We click on this. The dotted line will happen. Again, it's asking us, hey, you've got this selected. What would you like to orient constraint it to? Let's do this box on the outside. We click on this. Nothing seems to happen. But now when we rotate the outside box, the inside box comes along for free. And this is all done with constraints. And if we come back to the schematic view, you can see that these two guys live in their own hierarchies. We didn't parent them in any way. It's another way of affecting one object with another object without putting it into a hierarchy. And this is obviously very, very good for rigging in a number of situations. Now we can get these to affect one another without this box that we attached to it, without we did this position and rotation constraint jumping across. And we do this by selecting this guy. We come over to the motion tab here. And if we come down, you can see that we have this thing called a rotation list. And we can actually switch this out because we don't want to go in and affect this orientation constraint, which is currently got assigned. We want to come across to position here. We click on this. It's currently got this position constraint, which you can see. It's at 100%, and it's attached to this one designated by this tiny little arrow next to it. We have the position XYZ, which is its original transformation controller. It's how we actually move it around, but instead we've overwritten that with a position constraint. Now, doing that, it means that this box is attached to box number 2 all the time, and it jumps to it when, you saw that when we did the original position constraint, it jumped across to it. Now that's perfectly fine, but sometimes you don't want that to happen. You want it to be position constraint, but you don't want it to jump across to the same position. And we can come down and turn that off by coming all the way down to the bottom, and you can see here we can add a different position constraint target to something else in the scene. For instance, let me just quickly create another box, as you can see here, and if I come across to the motion tab, if I add a position constraint, you can see if I click this guy, he's going to jump into the middle of these two. And if I move any of these boxes now, you can see he's sitting right in the center, perfectly center between these two. This is a good way of getting the central position of something. But again, it's just another way of doing things. It's not affecting the hierarchy at all. It's another way of attaching objects together without putting them in hierarchy. Now let me go back and jump in, just show you how this box jumps to the center of these. But if we want to keep the initial offset, so in terms of where we actually created it originally, we can do that by coming back down here and just clicking keep initial offset. Watch this guy. He's going to jump back to where we originally created him. Boom. Now he's still position constrained to these guys. So if we grab this and we move it, you can see the position constraint is still there, but he's not in the direct center of these two boxes. And that's because we've came in here and we've actually used this keep initial offset. Once again, we can click this and he will jump back to the central point. So if we do this, we move it out, you can see that box is now in the center. If I click that again, keep initial offset, it will jump back to its original position or keep as close to it. Obviously, it has some constraints in there, so it's going to move along with these boxes no matter what. So this is a way that we can affect objects by another object without actually putting it in a hierarchy, which can often be very, very helpful to us.